I'm Uncle Mark, and I'm going to do thermostat of my wife's 2010 Dodge Grand Caravan with the 4-liter. This should work, I think, too, with the 4-liter in the Volkswagen Touareg. Let's take a look and see. It's pretty easy to do, actually, on this one. So if you're wondering where it is, it's just on this side. It's right here on the 4-liter. You need to take this cover off. And that's pretty easy to do. It just clips up if you've never had it off before. 4 corners. Pop it up just a little bit. Actually come off too. There's clips in the back as well. And basically they're just little feet that kind of pop into here. They got little balls that clip in. And I'll show you what they look like up close as well. There's 4 of them. 2, 3, 4. Let's get you closer. See what they look like. Once you notice them there, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'll show you at the end, too, when we put this back together. So there's our thermostat housing right there and the hose. So we're going to want to drain some antifreeze. So if you look, there's a couple bolts there. They're going to be a little bit tough to get at. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you look just straight down from your coolant bottle there, way down there actually is a drain. Let's talk safety first, just so you know I've got this set up here. I've got 2 jacks, but I have a jack stand as well that's holding part of the frame there. It's not on the motor. It's actually on the subframe, just in case, you know, one of those jacks decides like it doesn't want to stay holding up. Safety, safety. So on the driver's side here, we mentioned just below your antifreeze bottle. Sticks out like a red sore thumb right there. So basically what you're going to have to do is just turn it counterclockwise. And you'll see the little drain just below it. Now this is going to make a big mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hose on it. This is what it's a 3/8 inch hose, and I don't know, I've got about 2.5 feet here or something like that. Should just be able to slip it on there. That's the plan anyway. I just gave it a couple turns and it went on there. It's just friction fit. And once it's there, I'm going to get a pan and put it underneath it. Just want to make sure it's sitting in there for sure. And of course, the hose is got kind of a curve to it, so I think I'm going to try and turn it a little bit, just so it points down. That way, I can kind of control where it's dripping to. So I got my pan. Make sure it's in a spot that I can access. Just going to take this rad cap off. Want to make sure the vehicle's cool, at least cool to the touch. I'm always careful anyway, and just slowly. That was okay. Maybe I'll just set that out of the way. I'm going to put it on top of the motor here, somewhere where I won't lose it. So, back underneath. And I get my flat screwdriver. You might be able to just turn it by hand, but this, I'm going to use a flat screwdriver. I'm going to turn it counterclockwise. Just give it a little bit of, there you go. I should be able to turn it with my fingers now, for sure. Just want to make sure everything is not going to make a mess. I'm just going to turn it a little bit, see how much flow I can get out of this. If I get it at the right rate, I can maybe do a couple more things, come back to it, keep checking on it. So this seems like, I think it's about as fast as it's going to come out. Maybe a little faster, but good enough. So after quite some time here, I think this is about as much as I want to hold in here for now. I'm going to climb back underneath and turn it off. Simple enough. So clockwise, get it to stop. I was wondering why this stuff looks so clean, but I actually did a water pump and timing chain to this, or timing belt, a while back, and I put new antifreeze in it. Now you're not going to drain it all. So what I did is I took that and I put it into this big jug behind me here. I'd suggest if you have never changed yours before, just throw this out. You can bring it somewhere you can recycle it. This might be a good time. If you would, please give me the thumbs up. That way YouTube knows I'm doing a good job here trying to show you something. So, of course, once I had it all drained, and this was everything, it finally stopped. So basically drained out about 6 liters, or about 1.5 gallons, I guess, US gallons, liquid gallons. So it gives you an idea how much you're going to drain out. So here I've got it into a really big jug. So I bought some coolant from Mopar. Now this stuff was not the pre-mixed, this is the concentrate, and I had already filled my 1 jug half full of water. I'm using distilled water. Well, actually this is a reverse osmosis. But you can always buy some distilled water. It's cheap. 10 millimeter is the wrench I'm using on here. So the plan was, if I could get this top bolt off and the bottom one, which is really hard to get off, I could just get the 2 of them off and just pull it with the hose. That way I wouldn't have to take the hose off, wouldn't have to disturb the clamp. And then I found out, no, that's not going to work. So let's go to plan B. Plan B was taking the clamp off. I've got this special pair of pliers, 4 clamps. Try and put a link in the description if you're interested in buying these. They work not too bad, although in this case, just not enough room almost. There are some that are a lot more money that are actually on a cable. So the clamp part itself that's squeezing these together is hooked up to a cable, and then you have remote access with your other hand. It's way better for tight spaces. Here I'm going to tighten this bolt up that I had loosened earlier because I want to be able to get at this hose. Now the hose, I'm going to use these special hose picks, I guess is what you can call them. They come in a set, I think, of 3. There were a couple different angles depending on where the hose is and how it's, situated. So I'm going to use this one that sticks backwards. And what I'm trying to do is poke against the housing itself, the plastic housing, and not against the rubber hose, because I don't want to rip it. If I can just get it to release a little bit. Get in there and then kind of spin it around. Try from underneath as well. Once I got that, I tried to spin the hose a little bit more. Spin and pull a little bit. Oh, and then, of course, there's probably going to be a little bit of antifreeze in here, or coolant. So expect it to gush. Probably should have had a little margarine container or something underneath to catch a little bit of that. Wouldn't have made it as much of a mess. I'll just have to go to the car wash later and wash it off. 10 millimeter is the socket I'm using, along with this ratcheting. Well, it's a ratchet, but it's a flex head, which is kind of nice. And a little extension so I can get at that bolt that's way in behind the housing here. That one was hard to get at. If you're wondering if it's worth buying the tools or not, maybe you just have wrenches. So a couple bucks for some of these tools. You're saving the money on the labor, and what I always find is, you'll use the tool again on something else. So it pays for itself, especially at the labor rates nowadays. I'm going to try and reach underneath as well and get at that back one. That one's a tougher one to get at. It's doable though, but the hose has to be off. They're a little bit longer, lots of thread on them. Try not to drop it. Got that out. Pull the bolt off. You can see how long it's got, quite a bit of thread. Do the top one, and we just about got this thing apart and out. Again, they're kind of long, so it's going to take a little bit of turning, but there we go. Not sure how tight this is going to be on here. Give it a couple wiggles. It's just plastic, so you don't want to break it. And it came off. Nice. Have to note which way it goes on. There's a little tang there. See, that's going to be a special way too. This is going to go back on, and the way your Thermostat's going to sit in there as well. We're going to have to take note of how it sits. I've just got some needle nose pliers. I'm just going to grab it, give it a little wiggle, and it's out. And that's basically what it looks like. I want to make sure which way it was sitting in there too. See, there's a little hole on the top. So that's the way it's going to go with that hole pointing up. Okay, and we want to make sure we put it back in the right way as well. Product link in the description for this as well. I got actually a good deal on this through Amazon. You want to double, triple check that it's the right number when you order yours. I'm just looking at make sure they're the same. The thing I noticed is this rubber gasket was just a hair different. It had this little notch on top. See where my finger is on top there? I think what we're going to do is work on it a little bit. So I just wanted to make sure everything was clean here. It's just a rubber gasket that's going to sit on here, so and make a seal. At least it's kind of nice. I didn't have to really clean anything up much. But just with that little debit or whatever you want to call it up there that's sticking up, it doesn't fit in the hole properly. So I'm just take a knife and just gently try and cut it off. I guess if worst came to worst, I could reuse the old one, the old seal, but I'd rather use the new one. So basically I just worked on it a little bit and cut it off. Which isn't the easiest to do because it's kind of moving around. This rubber is very soft, so you can see as you're cutting, it wants to move around as well. So I spent a little bit extra time, got it from both sides. Didn't make it perfect, but it fits in there a lot better. And that's all that I was really worried about. It hasn't been leaking since I did this, so if you're wondering. And again, I guess as a backup, if for some reason I had trouble with this, and noted it before I put it together or cut it too much, I could always use the old one. Like say, this seemed to work okay. You can see it's not perfect, but it's going to go in there. Remember that little tang there on the one side there is going to be the lower one. This will be the top one. That little piece is going to have to sit pointing up, but remember this housing is going on not straight, right? It's kind of going at 1 o'clock in the 7 o'clock position, so we need to put that in there. That's going to face that way, so I'm going to spend a couple minutes just making sure that it does sit that way. Of course, I'm not going to show you all that time on camera here. Actually, it didn't take very long at all. But why not spend just a little extra time just making sure it sits properly? So I guess what I can do is put the bolts back in. And that's easy enough. Just kind of screw them in. Finger tight, both on the top one and the bottom one. Again, don't forget the skippable chapters. Hopefully they're working. That you need to go back or go ahead. Should be proper names with them. I'm going to use this little ratcheting finger wrench. Works really good. I'll put a link in the description as well. I use these a lot, especially if there's not a whole lot of room. Bought these quite a while ago. There was a set of them. I don't know if I can find the complete set this time, but there was a 1/4 inch, 3/8, and a 1/2 inch. They weren't a whole lot of money, and you can rotate, change directions as to how you want them to ratchet, and they work slick. Just gonna snug the bottom one up again here and see if we can figure out what the torque is supposed to be for this. There is, I'm sure, a torque spec, and I can't find one specific to the 4-liter. They show you all the other ones, so I'm guessing 108 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. Of course, there's a different housing for the 3.8 liter, completely different setup. This is the easier one, I would say. Actually, what I did, I just snugged them up. I didn't even do the 108 inch-pounds, but I'd suggest you do. So get the hose back on, just wiggle it back on there. Remember, it only goes so far and stops. It doesn't have to go right to the end. And then I'm hoping to get this springy clip, a hose clamp, back on, and I'm hoping to put it exactly where it was before. I find sometimes they'll leak if they don't sit exactly how they were. So you can kind of see in the dirt where it's supposed to sit, but I thought that's where it was. And then it's like, no, what's that shadow there? So what I did is I took a quick little look on the side and found out for sure I was wrong. You can see right there. Well, I'll just remove it again. Don't let my wife know this is, probably the first time I've ever been wrong in my life. Yeah, right. Because this will be the second time. It's still not where I need it to be. It's kind of hard to see trying to stick your head in there versus putting a camera in there, but it needs to move over a quarter of a turn or something like that. And again, the reason why it's nice to have it like that is because usually I find that they'll leak if they're not exactly in the right spot. Now, while I'm editing this, it's been about 4 or 5 days since I actually did this job. It's not leaking so far. So far, so good. So it's good to check it a few times just to make sure. Now it'll be time to put some coolant back into the radiator. It's a little bit of a process. So I've got a nice big funnel. And I've got my pre-mixed antifreeze. I did a 50-50 mix on here. Start it up a few times. Let it run a little bit. Try to get some antifreeze in there. This way I'm hoping not to get any airlocks by the engine running. But I don't want it running with nothing in there. So I probably could have, poured half a bottle in first, half a jug, and then started it. But it's getting some coolant, so that's good. So that was the first bottle, or jug. Wasn't really sure how much more I have left. So again, I did another premix. This time I put the rest of the antifreeze, the full strength in there, just so I'd know how much water to put in. We've got a reverse osmosis, again, I mentioned. So I'm going to put in roughly the same amount again. Hopefully my wife doesn't mind I'm using her kitchen sink. And continued. This process, probably took 15 minutes. Especially when I got towards the end here. Wanted to make sure, that it was as full as it could be. But as the thermostat's going to open, it's going to cause the antifreeze to raise up in here a little bit until it fully opens. So what I'm doing is, on the driver's side there on the top hose, I'm just kind of squishing it a couple times, squeezing it, letting it go. Squeeze it again, let it go. Hoping to get, the antifreeze to push around and push any bubbles out if possible, any airlock. Some are a lot harder. The 4 liter is pretty easy to do. I can feel the hose is starting to get warm. Oh, so something must have happened here. Thermostat probably opened up a little bit, so I'm going to try and put a little more in there. And it filled up. It's like, ooh, I think I'm over full. And just squeeze it just a little bit, see if I can get it to go in a little further. So, I don't know, I guess a person could try and sop it up a little bit with something. I'm going to use my antifreeze tester and suck out some of it. I guess I was in too much of a hurry. Suck out what I can, put it back in the bottle. There's my fresh bottle here. Try and take a little bit more. Oop. You can see it looks like I haven't taken any out, but I've actually been taking it out, but it's the level's rising. So I'm going to try and maybe let it sit there. Squeeze that hose a few more times. Check for leaks. Can't hurt to check underneath as well where we let the antifreeze out. Looks like it's going to be okay. Let's come up just a little bit more. This will suck some more out of it. Yeah. Making a mess. Hard to do this and hold the camera at the same time. We're just about done. Anyway, you've seen, it's been raising up a little bit, so it's good we took some out. I guess in theory, what it should do is it should go into that overflow hose just to the right of the top of this. Into the bottle there, the overflow jug. So I'm going to turn the heaters all on to full. This has got rear heat as well, rear air and heat. See what it does. This should run just maybe, usually it ran a couple needles below half needle widths. Of course, yours might have ran at a different spot there too. Still went up a little bit. I'm going to drain a little bit more of this out of there. Put the cap on, and then I'm going to go for a ride. Get the temperature up, and then it should be good. And I will leave it alone. I won't try and take this cap off while it's hot. So, went down a little bit. Even if it's down a little bit like this, if your overflow bottle, that reservoir on the side there, that tank, is full, it should be able to suck back whatever it might need, and it'll just float back and forth. But there we go. So I've got a half a jug left over. Put the lid back on. Rad cap. You have to kind of push down on it just when you think it's closed, and it'll go a little bit further. And I think I am done. It went actually pretty easy. The worst part, I think, is the mixing of the antifreeze. And you could buy, I guess, 50-50, like a pre-mixed. It's going to cost you twice as much money versus mixing it yourself and buying a little bit of distilled water. Distilled water is not that expensive, is it? I guess you could price it out, see what's easier, what you want to do. Now, this just sits on those little clips I was telling you about. So if you line that up with these two items, see where it just sits in the middle like that? And I can feel that it's actually sitting on top of those clips. So just push them down lightly with your hands. And then on the back as well. And I think I'm done. What I'm going to do with my bottle here, because this is the good stuff, I'm going to pour it back into my factory jug. And then I'm going to mark it just so that I know what's in it and that it's already pre-mixed so that I don't have to test it. And I probably will never need it, but it's that easy to do. And like I say, the actual Mopar Chrysler Dodge antifreeze was really no more expensive than my local hardware store. And this is the real stuff, so easy enough. Here, I'll even be a real mark and just write down the date when I bought this. It's May of 2023. There you go. If you're wondering what tools again, these are the tools that I had used. Basically, a funnel will come in handy. Some kind of a pair of pliers. 10 millimeter socket will be probably the way to go. As you saw some of the issues I had. Plus that piece of 3/8 hose. That really helped a lot. I also used a ratchet and a utility knife, and there may be some other specialty things that could make the job even go a little quicker. So that was actually pretty easy, I thought. A couple simple tools. I had a couple of extra ones there. If you like to get some of those, I'll put a link in the description below. Otherwise, I don't know, an hour and a quarter maybe. Allow yourself a couple hours. Do it in the afternoon or something like that so you're not rushed, and you should be able to do it easily. If you don't mind, give me the thumbs up if you haven't already. You can subscribe down in the corner as well. See what's new coming up. I'll put a playlist as well right here. above the blue circle with the flashing yellow arrow to more videos on this van. And this was specific to the 4-liter. If you have the 3.6, I believe is the newest engine they're running right now, it's on a different side of the engine, and it's a complete housing that you have to buy, I believe, altogether. If I ever do one, I'll put it in, because there is another playlist on the newer Caravans with the 3.6. Until next time, I'm Uncle Mark saying bye-bye for now. You and your family stay safe. Please subscribe, and you'll get all the notifications. It's easy. The little dog will show you how. Ring the bell. Ring the bell. Over here. Keys, please. You can subscribe down in the corner. Let's maybe do this again.